Penguin Random House Audio presents The Owl Always Hunts at Night by Samuel Bjørk. Translated from the Norwegian by Charlotte Barsland. Read for you by Laura Paton.
One Friday in the spring of 1972, as the vicar of Sandefjord was locking up his church for the day, he received an unexpected visit that made him keep his office open a little longer. He had never seen the young woman before, but he recognized the young man. He was the eldest son of one of the most respected men in the town, a shipping magnate who was not only one of the richest men in Norway, but also a staunch supporter of the church. A man whose generosity had, among other things, made it possible 10 years ago to commission the huge altarpiece in roughly carved mahogany which depicted 17 scenes from the life of Jesus Christ, an altarpiece of which the vicar was extremely proud. The young couple had a special request. They wished to get married, but they wanted the vicar to perform the ceremony with no one else present. That in itself was not unusual, but the reason behind their request was so peculiar that at first the vicar thought it had to be a joke. Then again, he knew the shipping magnate well, knew how religious and conservative the old man was, and began to realize that the couple were indeed serious. The shipping magnate had been in poor health recently, and rumour had it that he was on his deathbed. The young man now sitting in front of him would soon inherit a huge fortune. His father, however, had attached one condition to his son's inheritance. No outside blood could be mixed with the families. The woman his heir chose to marry must under no circumstances have children from previous relationships. And herein lay the problem. The young woman with whom the son of the shipping magnate was deeply in love did have children from an earlier marriage. A little girl aged 2 and a boy aged 4. The children would be hidden away, and the vicar could then quietly marry the couple so that the bride would appear to comply with the shipping magnate's demand, and no one would be tempted to try to discover the truth. Was that possible? This was the plan the couple had come up with. The young man had a distant relative in Australia. She had promised to look after the children until the shipping magnate died. A year, maybe 2, and then the children would be brought back to Norway. You never knew, the shipping magnate might reach the pearly gates sooner than expected. What did the vicar think? Could he find room in his heart to help them in their hour of need? The vicar pretended to ponder their request, but the truth was he had already made up his mind. The envelope the young man had discreetly placed on the desk was fat, and why not help the young lovers? After all, the old shipping magnate's demand was utterly unreasonable, wasn't it? The vicar agreed to wed the couple, and the following week, in a small ceremony held in a closed church in front of the magnificent altarpiece, they were married. Less than a year later, in January 1973, the vicar received another visit. This time, the young woman came on her own. She was clearly distressed and told him she did not know where else to turn. The old shipping magnate had died, but something was wrong. She had not heard a word about her children. She had been promised pictures, letters, but nothing had arrived, not a single word, and she was starting to doubt if this relative in Australia even existed. The woman also confided in him that the man she had married had not turned out to be what she thought he was. They were no longer on speaking terms, nor did they share a bed. He had secrets, dark secrets, things she could not make herself say out loud. She could hardly bear even thinking about them. Could the vicar help? The vicar calmed her down, assured her that of course he would help her, that he would think things over, and he asked her to return in a few days. The next morning, the young woman was found dead, slumped over the wheel in her car in a deep ravine close to the shipping family's luxurious home on Vesteråya, outside the centre of Sandefjord. The newspapers hinted that the woman had been intoxicated while driving, and the police did indeed treat her death as a tragic accident. After assisting the family with the funeral arrangements, the vicar decided to pay the young shipping magnate a visit. He explained, as was the truth, that the young woman had sought him out the day before the accident, that she had been anxious about her children, that something did not add up. The young shipping magnate listened and nodded, explained that, sadly, his wife had been very sick recently, on medication, drinking excessively. After all, the vicar himself had seen the tragic outcome. Then the young shipping magnate wrote a figure on a piece of paper, which he slid across the desk. Surely this town was too small for the vicar. Would he not be better off serving the Lord in a different location, possibly nearer the capital? The vicar rose from the chair, and that was the last time he ever saw the young and powerful shipping magnate. A few weeks later, he packed his suitcase. He never set foot in Sandefjord again. The little girl lay as still as she could on the sofa under the blanket, while she waited for the other children to fall asleep. She had made up her mind. She would do it tonight. She would be scared no longer. Wait no longer. She was 7 years old and very grown up. She would leave once it started to get dark. She had not swallowed tonight's sleeping pill, just pushed it under her tongue, where she had kept it when she showed Aunt Julia what a good girl she had been. "Show me," tongue out. "Good girl, next." Her brother had been doing it for a long time, ever since the time they had locked him in the beaten earth cellar. Every night he would hide the pill under his tongue without swallowing it. "Show me," tongue out. "Good boy, next." 3 weeks in the dark for refusing to say sorry. All the children knew that he had done nothing wrong, but the grown-ups had put him in the cellar all the same. Since that time he had changed. Every night he would slip the pill under his tongue without swallowing it, and, as her own pill started to take effect and she grew sleepy, she would see his shadow tiptoe out of the room and disappear. The little girl waited until she could hear that the other children were asleep, before she sneaked out of the house. It was winter now, and still warm, though the twilight had settled softly between the trees. The little girl walked barefoot across the yard, keeping to the shadows until she was hidden by the trees. Having made sure that she had not been spotted, she had run along the track between the big trees down towards the gate that bore the wording, "Trespassers will be prosecuted." This was where she had decided to start her search. She had heard her brother and one of the other boys whisper about this. An old ramshackle shed, a small, forgotten cabin on the far side of the estate, but she had never seen it herself. They were woken up at 6 o'clock in the morning every day and went to bed at 9 o'clock every night. Always the exact same routine, no variations, with only 2 15-minute breaks from lessons, homework, yoga, laundry, and all the chores that had to be done. The little girl smiled at the sound of the crickets, and she felt the soft grass tickle her feet as she veered from the path and moved cautiously along the fence towards the place which she, in her mind's eye, had decided must be the likely location of the cabin. For some reason, she was not scared. She felt almost light. The terror would not set in until later. Right now she felt happy, free as a bird, all alone with her thoughts in the beautiful forest which smelt so good. She smiled broadly and trailed her fingers over a plant that looked like a star. It was almost like being in one of the dreams she often had when the pills they were given were not very strong. She ducked under a branch and did not even jump when she heard rustling in the bushes a short distance away. Perhaps a koala bear had ventured down from the trees. She giggled to herself and wondered what it would be like to pat one. She knew that they had sharp claws and that they were not cuddly at all, but she tried to imagine what it must feel like anyway, the fluffy, warm fur between her fingers, the soft nose tickling her neck. She had almost forgotten why she had come outside, then suddenly remembered and stopped in her tracks when the wall of the cabin came into view, only a short distance ahead of her. The little girl tilted her head and studied the grey wooden boards. So it was true. There was a place in the forest. A place where you could hide, be on your own.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?